One of the hardest parts of podcasting, or let's be honest, making any kind of content at all, is being yourself. I don't know about you, but for me, knowing hundreds, thousands, possibly millions of people will be listening to what I'm saying or watching what I'm doing is really intimidating. Opening yourself up to just one person is hard, right? So when you're faced with the idea of millions of people, that is almost too much to comprehend. Over the past few months, I've put a very conscious effort into figuring out how to actually be myself online, which turns out is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. What it takes to let down that guard of the manufactured version of us that we want the world to see us as, and how to overcome that fear of vulnerability for long enough to actually click post.
Hello and welcome to Podcast for Profit. My name is Morgan Franklin. I'm a podcast producer, strategist, and educator. This podcast will help you create and grow a podcast that cuts through the noise of social media and speaks directly to your target audience. If you're ready to create a podcast that will align you with the experts in your industry, position yourself as a trusted leader, and create another source of revenue for your business, you're in the right place.
Trying to be yourself online kind of feels like the first day of school. Like your teacher sits everybody down and they say that we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves and say one fun fact. It has that same level of stress to it. You want to be cool, but not too cool. You want to know what to say, but you don't want to be too rehearsed. You want to seem friendly, but not too eager, right? You want to be perfect, but also not too perfect that nobody wants to hang out with you at lunch. And that quest for perfection, that wanting to be just the right amount of everything, for most people, that pressure is enough to stop them from ever posting online. Besides a few vacation pictures and random concert photos, they'll stay behind the safety of their screen. They'll stay behind the safety of a private profile. But not you. You're a podcaster. You know what it's like to share yourself online. Or do you? Do you know how to be yourself online? Or do you know how to be the brand or yourself with 4 major content pillars? Because that is not you. And this comes from a place of total vulnerability and honesty from me. I have really struggled with this. I want to separate myself from my podcast, from my brand, from me online. And I've told myself for so long it was because I'm a private person. I'm a private person. That isn't true. The truth is, I'm afraid of someone contradicting me. I'm afraid of someone making me question myself. I'm afraid of being seen and someone thinking I'm not worthy of their time or energy. I'm afraid of rejection, and more specifically, rejection of who I truly am. And I think that's how so many of us feel, but we can't even put it into words because we've put that brand out there instead of us. So if the brand gets rejected, it's still not us. We still don't feel that pain because you know what? We never really put ourselves out there in the first place. And you can't hurt me if you don't actually know me. And we all feel this. From the creator with 10 followers to the creator with 10 million followers. Why do you think Beyonce doesn't do interviews? I'm being totally serious. Why do you think she only posts the most curated version of herself and her family and her work? Because she doesn't want us to come in and to critique and comment and give our opinion. She's Beyonce. She doesn't have to. But you know why she doesn't have to? Because she spent 75% of her life putting everything on display for us. And we do not have that luxury. If you want to build a brand around yourself, as so many of us do, you have to share yourself. And not just how you scaled your business or created a product or did whatever you did. We want to know you. What are you interested in? What makes you happy? What are you thinking about besides being a one-dimensional person in your industry? And of course, this is so much easier said than done, right? I know because I've been doing it. I have been drastically shifting my content from only being about my business to being about what it's like to run this business, what it's like to be a professional podcast producer, and more importantly, what I'm interested in, who I am, why you should care in the first place. Think about it like this. Let's just pretend that we're at a networking event and you're shaking hands with people and asking them what they do, we're chit-chatting. What's one of the main objectives that you have in this literal moment? It's probably to find a point of commonality that's outside of work, right? We're all desperately trying to find, okay, what is something that connects us that is not your literal job title? And most of the time, if I'm being honest with you, I just skip straight to the compliment or I talk about what's going on at the event. I'm trying to leave the boring parts out and get to know you. Hey, I love your shoes. What's been your favorite event here? Oh my gosh, me too. Did you see so-and-so? Yes, I love her from this. And can you believe this? And wow, I've just made a lasting connection and better yet, a friend. You know what an unsuccessful interaction at a networking event usually sounds like? Hello, I work at such and such, doing such and such. Oh, cool, I work at such and such, doing such and such. Nice to meet you. You are never going to talk to that person again or think about them ever again. Like the people that you just meet on the surface level and you're talking about your credentials with each other, you will never think about that person ever again. And why would you? It was such a surface level conversation about just your professional work. It meant nothing to you. It meant nothing to them. And so all this being said, why are you only being the I work at such and such and I do such and such with your online persona? And when you think about it in the context of real life and social media being an extension of you and all the content that you create, your podcast being an extension of you, when you know that people don't really connect with this in real life, why are you making it the only kind of content that you're showing up with online? You know what I'm saying? And I'm 100% guilty of this. I'm still working on it. It's taken me a long time to wake up to this information because I've been so stuck in wanting every single thing to be tied up with a beautiful matching bow that I neglect to realize that no one really cares. They don't. They don't care about the beautiful graphic or the perfectly designed pin or the meticulously scripted podcast. We're living in a world of fast-paced content. People want it and they want it now. And most of the time, they don't care if it's at the cost of it not being exactly perfect, of it just kind of coming out how it is. Because everything is happening so fast that if you actually want to grow an audience, showing up consistently is so much more important than showing up perfectly. But how do you really get past this? How do you climb Cringe Mountain? How can you make that messy, lo-fi content that is performing so well right now and is getting all the views and likes and downloads? First of all, the first step towards success is accepting failure as your friend. People who never try never fail. But on the flip side of that, people who never try never succeed. And this is a necessary vulnerability to doing anything new. And you have to start to pursue that anxiety. You have to see that anxiety of failing as your friend. I like to think of this as a numbers game because really that's all it is. Let's say that you make 100 podcast episodes over the next year, and 2 of those really take off. On the other hand, let's say that you make 100 podcast episodes over the next 5 years, and 2 of those really take off. It's the same amount of work, and it's the exact same results, but it feels like it's happening much less consistently. Because instead of you having a really successful episode that's popping off every 6 months, you're now having one every 2.5 years. And that's really hard as a creator and just a person with feelings to keep going when you are seeing that success so inconsistently. Because like I said, it's the same amount of work. It's the same results, but it's just happening at a different frequency, which makes us perceive it so much differently. This is what helps me the most. Make a goal for yourself and stick to it. I am never accountable to myself for posting unless I have a predetermined goal. For example, on Sunday, I'll say, this week I'm posting 4 times on Threads, 2 times on LinkedIn, 4 times on TikTok, once on Instagram, and I'm sending out a newsletter. And that sounds like so much when I'm saying it, right? And honestly, that is usually about half of what I'm putting out in a week. But when I have it all mapped out, it makes it so much easier. It goes from being 12 pieces of content individually to making 4 pieces of content and repurposing it across 5 different platforms. That way, I'm not just relying on my old set of tricks and only talking about my business. I can take that extra time to think about if this is actually connecting with someone and coming from my heart. and is actually something I am interested in right now and I want to talk about. I don't just feel pressured to only share my podcast episode and then I get so caught up in everything that I can't even think about what would actually connect with my audience. Let's talk about how to correctly use authority content marketing. I think this is where so many of us have misconceptions about what our future customer or listener or follower actually wants to hear from us. Again, let's act like this is you meeting someone for the first time. You would never walk up to someone and say, "Hey, I've made $500,000 in sales in the past 3 months, and I've got 4 clients from this email sequence." No, that'd be insane. So why are we using that kind of content at the top of funnel to draw people in? I understand that it's impressive. And I know that, again, authority content does have a place to prove your credibility. But instead, what about authority content that talks about your story, that shares a struggle you've had and like how you overcame it and how the audience can too? What about what it looks like to work with you or how you actually have achieved all the success that's brought you to where you are? That's what's going to grow your community. That's what's going to make you a personal brand and podcast that people want to follow and that they can't wait to listen to. I remember in college, we had a representative from Lululemon come to our university, which for a rural Tennessee school was a really big deal. I remember thinking even then, wow, Lululemon. If I could ever figure out how to market my business like Lululemon, I'd never have to worry about anything ever again. She started her presentation with showing us a bunch of pictures of women working out and smiling and a whole bunch of stuff. Nothing really directly linked to Lululemon. Just basically vibes of what a upper middle class woman who wore Lululemon and spent $300 on a workout outfit would like. And she said, "It's not the product you create, it's the tribe." The tribe. I still think about her saying that because in that moment, it was awe-inspiring to me. And the funny thing is, I thought I knew exactly what she meant. And now 10 years later, I still think about it, and I'm not sure I exactly know even now. But I do know one thing. People want to feel a part of something. They want to align themselves with someone that they relate to and that represents them in a better way than they could even represent themselves. If you aren't taking the time to cultivate that tribe through your content and your podcast, or even the way you interact with people online, it is going to be a very long road for you to arrive at any successful destination. I went to a podcasters event in Nashville a couple weeks ago, and their featured speaker was Jad Abumrad. He's the creator of Radiolab on NPR and Dolly Parton's America. Arguably 2 of the most successful podcasts to ever exist, right? During the Q&A, someone asked him about how long it took him to find his voice, quote unquote. And I thought this was so interesting. He said it'd sometimes take him 2 hours of warming up and reading and practicing bullet points to get his voice ready to record so that he didn't just sound like he was reading off a piece of paper or being that kid that stands up in front of the whole class on the first day of school and doesn't know what he's saying. This was really shocking to me because throughout his entire presentation at any podcast I've ever heard him on, he's been the most captivating person to listen to. During his presentation, he was telling the story of a girl who walks down a hall and sees a ball, and I was paying attention to this like it was a prophecy. But there's a very important lesson to be learned here. Most of the time, the people that we think are so effortless and naturally good at being themselves online or even in person have spent a lot of time and effort to just come off like they showed up one day like this. And I just want to say the internet is a scary place sometimes. There's a lot of people with a lot of feelings and not that many places for them to direct those feelings. No matter how much of yourself you share or what you post, someone that starts following you online is never really going to know you. They might think they do, but as you know, they don't. Don't ever take someone saying something about you online personally. I know this is the hardest and most intimidating part, but it's the truth. They don't know you. They don't know your experiences or your knowledge or your life. And even when they try to comment like they do, they still don't. Block every person who makes you doubt yourself or makes you feel less than the absolute superstar that you are. There is no time, and they don't deserve 1 second of your attention. You don't have to remake the wheel. I know I say this in almost every episode, but it's because it's true. You don't have to remake the wheel. If you've listened to this entire episode and you're thinking, okay, I know I want to start showing up online more as myself. What do I do now? Where do I start? I just want you to go into your saved content, wherever that is, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or Pinterest or wherever. Look at the content you liked so much that you took the time to save it and start there. What do you love about this content? What connection did you find with it? And just start there. There is nothing new under the sun. Everything is just a reuse of a recycled piece of content inspired by something else that happened 50 years ago that someone else ripped off. Remembering that always helps me when I feel overwhelmed and I feel like I just don't know what to create or how I can do something new that someone else hasn't already said or done. You can do this. You can show up as the amazing, interesting, complex person you are online, and your podcast and your brand and your business will be better for it. And as always, I can't wait to listen to your podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. If you enjoyed the podcast and you'd like to hear more episodes like this one, go ahead and subscribe to the show. New episodes air every Monday morning. And if you found this episode valuable and you want to help other business owners and podcasters, will you leave me a 5-star review? It helps the show rank higher in the charts and brings more entrepreneurs the information they need to start making money on their podcast.